2012, the year of the Diamond Jubilee, the London Olympics, which, like a true patriot, I was in France for the entire duration of, but also the year of focus for this week's episode of the Tune In Podcast with Sarah and Harry. This is now episode 15, and obviously, this is our Tri-Weekly special where we take a look at a year in music. Today's year, obviously, being 2012.
Yeah, so as usual, we have our 6 songs with our 3 different categories, so 2 songs per small category, if you like. We don't have a question per se this week, but we are going to be discussing the state of the UK at the moment in terms of the arts and how then, you know, all the things that are going on. We thought we'd just shed a little light on that for people who don't know, and people who do know can just sort of resonate with what we're saying. And then the final section again, as usual, is what we've been listening to over the past week.
Yeah, we'll try not to drag on the section of talking about the problems with the arts for too long, because otherwise we'll probably both lose our heads just talking about it. So we'll try and keep it to be as brief as we possibly can, but and hope we don't go off on any tangents. But without any further ado, let's move into Sarah's list of her influential songs for the year 2012.
Yeah, so 2012 was a weird year for me in life, and also in my music taste. They're a little bit all over the place. It's the start of sort of the emo bit / still kind of poppy. It's a bit of a mess. So I'm going to start off with my first song in my influential category, and that's a song by Muse, which I think I have mentioned before on the podcast. It's from the album The Second Law, which came out that year. But this song isn't like one of their most popular ones from the album. It's a song called Animals, which I thought was pretty interesting to talk about. I thought it was quite interesting. There was a competition in 2013, so the year after the song was released, to make a music video for the song. And the one that won was actually, I watched it and it was so cool. It was like a very simple but very sort of sinister, dark animation, and it ties in with the theme of the song quite nicely, which I'll get to in a minute. But I think for me the most significant feature of the song is the article I read said it was 10/8, but you could probably dispute 5/4 in some of the ways that it's grouped, some of the ways the notes, some of the ways the rhythms are grouped throughout the song. I think it tends to sort of change depending on which section it is. But anyway, and it sounds pretty seamless throughout the whole thing. You don't really notice it, and there's a couple of moments where I did sort of notice it was a bit jarring, but overall, like, it took me a couple of listens to actually realise what time signature we were in, and it's quite a fast tempo as well, which, you know, keeps it moving keeps it at this fast pace, so it's hard to sort of tell what time signature we're in, really what's going on. So the song is about, I'm going to take a direct quote, so the song depicts failing economies under the weight of stock market savagery, industries desperate to advertise, franchise and kill the competition, and the greed of bankers. So it's about sort of the bankers and people, and a direct quote from the drummer of the band said, everyone who's gambled everyone's money and ended putting up countries in debt. So it's quite a politically heavy song, and I think the song, it does a very good job of replicating that kind of sound.
Yeah, it's definitely got a very interesting experimental sound, as to be expected on The Second Law. It definitely harks back to like a 90s Radiohead sound. I read a review that said it sounded a lot like Radiohead's OK Computer, and I can definitely understand that. And that's not a bad thing, because I love OK Computer. But this definitely has that mellow but also quite experimental sound that Radiohead were trying to do on that album. So might be biased because I kind of like Muse, but I do really like this song. But my question to you is, obviously this is aimed at like the banks and people like that because of the greed that they have and the avarice of trying to take over the world and stuff like that. But do you think it's also aimed at the public who sucker up to it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole sort of the capitalist culture type thing and people who play into that. But I think I watched a video or read an article, I can't remember exactly which one it was. It's just very interesting about how it was actually about like fast fashion and stuff, I think, and the whole like capitalism that comes along with that, and the fact that everyone's so quick to blame people for playing into capitalism, but for a lot of people, like, they can't afford to not because it seems to be a lot cheaper than other more sustainable alternative options and things. So like, that was a bit of a tangent, I understand that, but like, so to a certain extent, yes, but it's mainly aimed at the people who are sort of forcing this society onto the people, because the people don't tend to have a choice or a say in how capitalist a certain area is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, obviously it's like mostly aimed at those in a higher power. I'm not disputing that for 1 second. I just wondered if there was maybe like this extra layer that could be interpreted like by some people as being like, oh, okay, it's actually aimed at the sheep, if you like, who routinely go along with this capitalist idea and, yeah, as I say, sucker up to it. But yeah, I'm obviously under no illusions that it is mostly aimed at those people in a higher power.
Yeah, and I think it's more to make people sort of aware that they're in this society and maybe change some things about what they do and where they decide to put their money and what they decide to invest in and what they decide to buy and all that stuff. So I think it shames the people who then don't actively try to change something or acknowledge it. So it shames those people and makes those people think about what they're doing, but then doesn't shame people who don't have a choice in what they can do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. A little bit of politics and capitalism for you there. Moving on to my second song. It's a song it's instrumental, by an artist called Lindsey Stirling, who was just becoming popular at that time. And it's her most popular single of the time, Crystallize. So she's obviously, if you don't know who Lindsey Stirling is, she's a violinist. She also dances as well, as she plays, which I think is quite impressive in itself. So this particular song was released in 2012, but the video got over 42 million views on YouTube, which at that time was pretty impressive. And then she made an album in 2013 and made this sort of the featured track on that album. It's hard to sort of tell what this is about because it doesn't have lyrics where we can sort of interpret that and like try and take a message from lyrics, but equally it's not like a classical piece that we can sort of interpret from the cultures and the politics of the time and everything. So I've managed to find a direct quote from her that says, "It's about taking control of your environment, creating beauty within yourself, and therefore creating beauty outside." So I can't really say if she's done a good job at that or not, but I think having a meaning to it just gives it a bit more emotion, a bit more oomph to it, if that makes sense. The reason this is in the influential category is because she sort of popularised her own genre of like what I think she liked to call it dubstep violin, or like just violin with an more electronic accompaniment. And she's now, a very, I don't know, and there's another way to say it other than she's very famous now. And this video essentially is what boosted her into the limelight.
Yeah, it's a very interesting combination, and it's very chilled out. My first question is, why on earth had I not heard of this song beforehand? Because I'm actually very confused, considering, of course, as you might have gathered from the 14 episodes prior, I'm quite into electronic music, so I've got absolutely no idea how I hadn't heard of Lindsey Stirling beforehand. But I'm glad that you've introduced me to her, because I have a lot more to discover.
I'm I know. Surprised that you've never heard of Lindsey Stirling before.
I honestly had never heard. I had never heard of her, and I have absolutely no idea why. I'm clearly more myopic than I realised. But my question to you is: this might be very obvious, and you can tell me if it is. But could this bridge the gap between fans of the two genres, so dubstep and classical?
It definitely, coming from a more personal level, it definitely introduced me to more dubstep type stuff. After that, I tended to I listened to more like Skrillex and Deadmau5 and stuff after listening to this, so it sort of had this direct influence on me personally, so I would definitely say that. And also for me it was more like that she's a trained ballerina as well, so she has the dancing, and I used to dance at that time as well, so I was like really inspired by her. But yeah, no, definitely. I think it also inspired a lot of young musicians, young sort of classically trained musicians, to try out more things and trying different combinations of genres, which I think is really important for sort of the growth of music, trying to push boundaries and sort of break molds and stuff.
Yes, definitely. Like, it push out something that I didn't realize. I mean, obviously, a lot of artists or electronic artists have implemented live instruments into their electronic music. I have to bring up again, but Haywire is one of them.
Wow! What a surprise!
No, but like, yeah, what a surprise! But it is an example of something like that. Like obviously implementing keys in his case, but that is let's say a common thing. It's not as common as maybe I would like, but it certainly does happen, but a lot less so with violins, from what I have gathered. So again, I have no idea how I hadn't heard of her beforehand, but this song is great. Go and listen to it, and I'm basically just going to go on a Lindsey Sterling binge, just to try and listen to all of her songs and see if I like any of them as much as I like this one.
Yeah. My other favourite, I think, is a song called Round Table Rival, and the music video for it is really cool. It's like got a Western theme. So yeah, I recommend that one too, but obviously that didn't come out in 2012, so I couldn't have chosen it. Now we move on to the favourites part of this list, and people who know me, this first pick probably comes as no surprise. It's the song Touch the Sky, which is sung by Julie Fowlis, from Disney Pixar 2012 classic Brave. So if you haven't seen Brave, I cannot recommend this film enough. It's incredible. Yeah, it's set in the Scottish Highlands, so even if you just love the accent, honestly, just watch it. It's so good. So the thing, I just love all of the music for this film. The score was done by Patrick Doyle. The most notable score I can think he's done at the moment is the Harry Potter Goblet of Fire score. He's done many others, but for some reason that's the only thing that's coming to mind at the moment. But Julie Fowlis wrote 2 original songs for this. So this song in the film is played when the main character Merida, she's like this princess of a clan up in the Highlands, and she doesn't really want to get married, but her parents are trying to force her to get married. So she's leaving the castle, and she's riding her horse through the forest and shooting arrows and climbing tall cliffs and doing things that princesses, shouldn't do typically. And then she sort of just returns home. It's just showing kind of she's not a typical princess type sequence. I really love it because it's got obviously this very Celtic type feel to it. It's 6/8, very lilty, and it's the combination of that and the two sort of more traditional folk instruments and more modern folk instruments, and they give it this really laid back kind of like carefree feel, which is exactly what Merida is like. And also her vocals really add to the sort of feel of, obviously she's Scottish, so her accent really comes through, so I think it really, really adds to the whole atmosphere of the song.
Well, yeah, I love the music, but as you might probably have guessed by the fact that it's Disney, I hated the lyrics. Like, I have a liking for Gaelic Celtic music. I do like it whenever I hear it. So I did like the instrumental. If this was just an instrumental, I would have been very happy. But then the lyrics came in and I thought, oh, all right, we're back into Disney genericness again. Genericism. You probably have answered my question already, but do you think the charm comes from the Gaelic influence in this song? Because it's obviously a big difference from what Disney Pixar normally do.
Definitely. So, I mean, the film is the first Disney film to feature Scottish Gaelic. There's a few songs and just parts of songs in Scots Gaelic. But yeah, I think that definitely the charm comes from the very different feel to a classic Disney song. But actually, I'm going to disagree with you in terms of the lyrics. I think they're much more profound and much more metaphorical than your classic Disney princess song, in my opinion. That's again why I picked this song, because I think it's a standout song in Disney's song library catalogue. Thank you. I think it is a standout song, and I would disagree with you there.
Okay, well, maybe again it's like this kind of not stumbling block, but mental block in my head that automatically thinks, right, Disney princess song, here we go, it's just going to be the same things over and over and over again. But I guess you're right, the charm does come from the music. I mean, for me, the charm definitely came from the music, and that's why I didn't dislike the song. I just didn't like it either, because it was kind of a negation. It's like they kind of counteracted each other perfectly. Maybe I need to listen to it a bit more just to get to grips with the lyrics completely, but even then, it's still, or just listen to Disney princess songs and maybe try and remove that block that I have.
See, yeah, I think you're just biased because as soon as I said Disney, you went, "Oh, it's absolutely not good. It's Disney." No, you had this sort of presumption, if that makes sense. You went in expecting not to like it. So obviously you're not going to like it if you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah, definitely.
If I hadn't have said it was Disney, if I had just been like, "Listen to this, I think it's really cool," you probably would have been like, "Oh, I really like this."
Maybe, but then again, I still would have thought the lyrics were even so a bit samey. I kind of was just like, okay, sure, but I did love the music, no question of that.
Okay, sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, Sarah takes that as a victory.
I don't really think I can convince you anymore, so you know what, I'll just take it. Yeah, so I'll move on to my fourth song now because clearly Harry doesn't like it. I know that you already don't like it just because of the kind of song that it is. But anyway, so the song is "How to Be a Heartbreaker" by Marina and the Diamonds, now just known as Marina, from her album Electric Heart. She's quite recently, I think maybe last year, changed her stage name from Marina and the Diamonds to just Marina. Also, I didn't realise, fun fact, she's Welsh. I thought she was American for this whole time, but it turns out that she's Welsh. Anyway, so it was this album that she released that got her the spot of the being a support act on Coldplay's Milo Xyloto tour in 2013. So, I mean, the song is pretty much, her lyrics tend to be not sort of metaphorical, not like having hidden messages. So she said this song basically involves the 4 rules on how to be a heartbreaker. It's a guide for everyone. So it's very much like sort of it is what it sounds like, and if you hear things, none of it's metaphorical. It take it as it is. However, don't take it seriously. A lot of her songs are sort of meant to be funny, meant to be like not taken seriously. The reason that I picked this song and I really like it, apart from the reason I grew up listening to the Electra Heart album, is I just love the genre that she creates. It's sort of like an electro dance pop type thing, and I love her vocals. They're quite, I don't know how to describe, they're quite harsh and soft at the same time. That's the only way I can describe them. It doesn't really make much sense unless you listen to her, really. But that's basically why I picked this song. Just I think she's really cool.
Well, here's the thing. Your presumption was actually kind of wrong. I didn't mind this. I'm not going to say I liked it, like, completely, but it wasn't something that I thought made my ears bleed, or anything like that. And I understand it's obviously got a very playful nature to it. I did think the kind of whispering interjections were a bit jarring. That was the one thing that did put me off a little bit. And it is slightly formulaic as well, obviously.
Yes.
But, Circuit's a decent producer, and he did an alright job. So this might be a stupid comparison to make, and it is my question, so, again, might be a bad idea, but we'll go with it anyway. But the song New Rules by Dua Lipa has kind of got a similar thing, but that made it massive, and this song only reached like number 88 in the charts. So why did this not make it as big as New Rules did? Is it because of the time of the song's release, or maybe the genre or whatever? Or maybe just Dua Lipa being more famous than Marina?
That's a really interesting question that I don't have a definitive answer to, obviously. But you could compare them in terms of having this sort of these rules to do something. You know what I mean? So I think the only thing I can really say is because this was Marina's sort of establishing album, and this was like sort of the first thing that made her more popular. Like, obviously it was on the back of this album that she got to be Coldplay support act. However, like, she hadn't already established herself. This was her establishing thing, whereas Dua Lipa had already established herself with was it Blow Your Mind? Was that the song? Was that her first
song?
I can think of.
Yes.
Yeah. So she'd already established herself with that song. So people are already going to be, going to listen to her. Whereas this song is pretty popular, and there's quite a few people who do know it, but there's also quite a few people who don't know it, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of people know her song Prima Donna. I think that did a lot better.
Yes.
Long story short, I think it's because she hadn't established. This was her establishing album. the other singles that came off that album were probably more popular than this one, whereas Dua Lipa's New Rules is probably one of her, if not her most famous song. I guess that's the only answer I really have. Otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I prefer this song to New Rules, but anyway.
I'm kind of like in the middle between the two. I mean, I don't think they're bad. And this song, I'm not going to call it amazing because I don't think that anyone would, like, in their right mind say that it's an absolute well-beating song and groundbreaking and all that stuff. But it does what it says on the tin, and it doesn't do it in an annoying or obnoxious way, I think. But
no.
Then again, I don't know. I also dislike people like Little Mix, for example. So I may be being hypocritical here, but I don't know.
Okay, we're not going to talk about that now, but we'll get there.
I've opened up a whole new can of worms here.
Like, I think just Little Mix are doing great things for music, and in terms of like.
Oh no, just in terms of the production. Just in terms of the production.
Oh, production, fine, whatever. I was like,
production,
you are not insulting Little Mix on this podcast. I'm not even that big a fan of them, but like. I'm not even like a huge fan, but like I just think they are doing great things.
They're doing a decent job. It's just that like I'm not a massive fan of some of the production on their songs. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay, production, fine.
Yeah. So hence why I'm saying I might be a bit hypocritical on that front, because I don't mind the production and it's quite similar.
I'm going to move on anyway, regardless, to my final section, which is the unknown section. And I don't know if they're as unknown as I'd like them to be, but I wasn't really, listening to any indie songs in 2012. So my first one is a piece of film music from, I think, one of my favourite films of that year, and it's Life of Pi. I thought it was beautifully done. To be fair, I haven't read the book, so I can't comment on how true it is to the book or whatever, but I think it was a really beautiful film, and it really makes you think. The piece I picked is called Simsum, spelled Timtsum, and the person who composed it is Michael Danner. So if you don't know, the film is based on a Canadian philosophical novel, obviously the same name, by Yann Martel, which was published in 2001. If you don't know, it centres around the protagonist, Piscine Molitor Patel, whose nickname is Pi, because I think it's because, if I remember rightly, he can name a lot of the numbers of pi, which is why he gets the nickname Pi.
Well, his name is Piscine, so surely it'd just be the first two letters.
But he also but he does that at the beginning in the school. He writes. He knows like a lot of the numbers of pi, which is also why he gets the nickname Pi.
Okay.
So anyway, he's an Indian Tamil boy who explores issues of spirituality and metaphysics of an early age. It's basically just a film that really makes you think and sort of question reality as well. So the music of this scene happens when I can't remember exactly why, but his parents, they own a zoo and they have to get on the boat. So they take all the animals onto the boat, but then there's a massive storm and the boat crashes and sinks. And this music plays in this very tense scene when he's trying to, he's gone into the water and he's trying to survive. And all these animals are going everywhere, and the sea animals, obviously they have some sea animals there as well. They're all eating the other animals, and it's all a bit crazy. But this music is quiet, slow moving, reflective. I think the music fits the theme of the film very well, and it was definitely an artistic choice to not have this really tense music while this really dramatic scene was happening, because that's not really what the film is about. It's about this sort of reflective nature, and it's very philosophical, which is why I love this piece. And I think it's not necessarily exciting or dramatic, or it doesn't have really cool intense moments. It's just very reflective and very calm, and something, if you want to have some study music or something to put in the background, I highly recommend this. But yeah.
Well, the thing is, you say it's all this reflective stuff. Yeah, it's aimless, but it's necessarily so. I wouldn't want to have in a film like this, I wouldn't want to have anything, as you say, that's overly dramatic, and it does that role really, really well. It kind of just feels like I'm floating on something whenever I listen to it. It was just I'm just floating on water, maybe. Obviously symbolic of the film poster, where he's obviously on a boat and there's a Bengal tiger to the side. Might be the left or the right hand side, I can't remember which one it was. But it definitely fits from what I can tell with the overarching storyline. Obviously, having not seen the film, I can't comment exactly, but from an outsider's perspective, I can understand why this works really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you said that it gives you the feeling of sort of floating on water. In that moment in the thing, he's literally underwater and he's not trying to get out. He's literally just floating and sort of watching these animals, have at each other and eat each other and fight and everything and drown and do all these kind of things. So he is the one that's sort of being reflective and just lying there in the water, slowly sinking, and watching all the chaos happen around him. And it was obviously an artistic choice to do with the film, the fact it's so slow, but they obviously fixated on the fact that he is still and calm, and that was the point that they were going to accentuate rather than the chaos that was happening around him. He was just meant to be like an observer of what was happening, because they could have easily done some really dramatic Jaws type music of like this animal swimming through the sea and just eating up all the animals, but obviously that just doesn't fit with the theme of the film or the philosophical reflective type film that it is, and the questions that it brings up and everything. But yeah, I highly recommend the film. It's a really beautiful film, and it just makes you think a lot. And the ending, if you know it, then if you know, then you know. So I'll move on to my final song, which is by a band that I think a lot of people know, but I don't think you'll know the song. If you do, then I apologise. It's probably the most obscure song I could have picked from this year, and it's by the All American Rejects, of the album Kids in the Street, which was probably, I don't know if it was the first album that I got of that year, but it was definitely up there, and I listened to it constantly. And this is a song called Gonzo, which I have no idea what it was about until I was doing this research. So the song is actually about a journalist, Hunter S. Thompson, who invented gonzo journalism, in which reporters involve themselves in action so much that there's the line or the boundary is blurred between what's actually real and what's not real, between the fiction and the non-fiction. And the lead singer, Tyson Ritter, which, if anything, is a cool name, was reading about it on a previous tour he was on, and it just made him think a lot about it and made him reflect on his band 10 years on, apparently. And he reflected on the song by saying it's something they've never done before. It's very different to what they normally do, which I think is true. It's quite a long song for them, and it's a very, what I like to call a slow burner. It gradually builds up to this point, and I think Ritter's unique and quite brash, quite harsh vocals add a different level of emotion and emotional contrast between the more calm bits and the more explosive bits, if you like. So that's why I picked this song.
Yeah, it builds and builds pretty well, and it's I couldn't remember what the band was, but there was definitely a song out there. If I remember, I'll make sure to put it in the players that you guys will listen to, because we will collate all the songs and put them into Spotify players, which you can find on our page of all the songs we mentioned during the episode, as per normal. And go and check out all the other ones as well, in case you've missed any of them, because some crackers on there. But my overriding question is that obviously it's quite a held back mix, I think. The mix is definitely quieter than what I would have normally expected, but it's held back right up until the end. Do you think that's intentional for the shock factor that it provides?
Yeah, I do think so, just because obviously it's sort of like something they've never done before. If you think about their other songs they did, the most famous really being Dirty Little Secret and what's that song called? Gives You Hell. Very different to that song. This song is obviously inspired by a real life sort of type, almost political-ish type situation that he was inspired by. Whereas for the other ones, it's sort of like typical sort of emo songs, if that makes sense, that sort of lack a sort of deeper level. Not saying they're not good songs, I love them, I think they're great, but this has that deeper meaning, and I think they were really trying with that to do something completely different. So I think it's also to keep you going to the end. It's quite a long song, and definitely for me, I was like constantly waiting for this moment to happen. And it keeps people listening until the very end, because you're like, oh, it's going to happen. No, it's not now. Oh, it's building. Oh, wait, not now. Not yet. Oh, now. And then it ends. Like, it keeps you going and keeps you listening. And, well, that's the end of my list. So now we will move on to Harry's list.
Yeah. See, I actually picked 2012, and the reason why I picked 2012 is when I was doing my list on my website of my 100 favorite songs of all time, I'm pretty certain that 2012 had the most representatives in that list. The first song that I've picked in the influential category is, it might be pretty obvious, but I can't avoid it any which way. It's Swimming Pools Drank by Kendrick Lamar. It was part of the incredible album Good Kid, Mad City, and there's just no way I couldn't include this. This song has so many deep layers to it. It's so multifaceted, and I love it so much. So the song deals primarily with alcoholism, with Kendrick discussing his experiences of growing up in a neighborhood and a family afflicted with alcoholism, as his granddad, which he mentions in the song, was an alcoholic. And he also deals with the peer pressure that many face to drink alcohol, which is/was highly common amongst students. And it's a shame that it is. I mean, obviously there's that huge peer pressure that people face constantly when they're on nights out, especially for me as a teetotal guy, being like, oh, why didn't you just get a drink? And it's like, no, that's not how it works. I'm sorry to break it to you. But that many people obviously fall into that trap. And Kendrick says that he did so himself as a result of his upbringing, although he has mostly been teetotal since the age of about 16 or 17. So the first verse is basically about that, like how he slipped into the situation, how he became basically an alcoholic. The second verse is the protagonist's conscience speaking to him about his drunken state and trying him to stop drinking as soon as possible. But then by the end of the song, the final verse is basically Kendrick resigning to his fate of the alcohol poisoning that he might experience and his failure in life, although it's actually excluded on the single version and in the music video, and it's only heard on the album version. And there was no way I could leave it out for 2012. No way.
Okay, well, I don't want to upset you or anything.
No, you can't.
But I'm not a fan. To me, it sounds very, like, the backing sounds very 2012. Sounds very sort of early 20 teens kind of sound to me. I think the subject matter is really great, and the way that he raps about it is great. It sort of just does nothing for me. It also was on a Vine that I saw ages ago, and I was like, this song is really weird, and then it was this song. I just wanted to know, like, my main question was sort of, what is it specifically about the song that you actually like? Because I couldn't really pinpoint anything that I liked, apart from the subject matter. Like, because you know, there can be songs that have like really great subject matter and tell really important stories, but like just aren't generally good to listen to, which is what I found with this. But... Okay,
I've got potentially 4 responses to you. The hook, which I love. It's a sing-alongable hook kind of thing, even though obviously it's very much quite serious. But I remember like my brother and I singing along to it a lot when we're back at home. Second is the production. It's meant to be very understated to like kind of make the message come across a lot more. It's meant to be this dark and eerie vibe, which is quite prevalent across Good Kid, Mad City as a whole. There's a lot of dark and understated production, and this song falls right into that category. The third is Kendrick's flow, which, as always, is brilliant. And the fourth, I guess, is just the message. As, again, a teetotal person myself, I can't resonate with it like as much, but that's one of the reasons why I avoided alcohol personally, is to avoid this potential slip into dependency and addiction, just to try and not submit myself to that. And I think this song puts it across really well. There are many other reasons, but I think those are the 4 main ones for me.
Okay, I mean, I definitely agree that he because I like other Kendrick Lamar songs, just not like, so I like his style of rapping, and I like his flow, and please correct me if I'm saying any terms wrong or anything, and I do think the subject matter is really good. I just don't like this very sort of early 2010s sound, and I think a lot of his newer stuff sounds a lot better.
I mean, the album Good Kid, Mad City is probably slightly worse than To Pimp a Butterfly. That album is ridiculous. Like it's ridiculous as to how good it is. But don't sleep on Good Kid, Mad City, obviously, because it's got a very high rating on review sites with good reason. And this song also received a lot of praise. Again, in my opinion, at least. Maybe less so in Sarah's opinion, rightfully so. But while Sarah didn't like my first song, I have a feeling she might like the second song. But it's interesting because I'm pretty certain we both like this band, but we've never mentioned them before on the podcast, and it's the 1975 with their song The City in my second influential pick rather. Admittedly, this is a tad sketchy because I'm picking the album version over the EP version, and the album version was released in 2013, but a version of this song did exist and was released in 2012, even though it's not the exact edition that I am picking. Please forgive me, but I also really love this song, so I'm going to go with it. It was released on the EP Face Down, which was their first material that actually made it into the public mainstream, but then re-recorded for their eponymous debut album for a much cleaner sound. And they decided to re-record it as, in Healy's words, it was the first piece of music that anyone could have heard by the 1975, so it was very important to us, close quotes. So they, open quotes again, took the opportunity to expose as many people as possible to the music that they feel defines them. So The City or Chocolate were the blueprints of the band in their eyes. I kind of agree. It is a typical 1975 like vibe with pop, alternative rock sound with undertones of teenage self-discovery or self-exploration, as Healy puts it himself. But I just really like I love their debut album, which was released in 2013, obviously, and I think this is one of the highlights from it. It was also the first song that I heard by the group, who have become one of my favorites at the time, so that's why I've put it in the influential category. But another interesting fact about it is that the third verse was apparently something Healy found on a piece of paper in some jeans of his. He has no recollection of writing it, but realised that it fit perfectly with the song, so he decided to include it anyway. Random fact for you.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, assumed right. I love this song, and I love their debut album. But for some reason, I for no reason at all, really, I just jumped off the 1975 train when their new stuff started coming out. I don't even know why. Like, I just never really got into it as much as I did before. You sort of answered my question, but I'm going to tweak my question slightly. So now, having this thing of hindsight, you mentioned that obviously it was sort of meant to be this first sort of insight into their band with this song and Chocolate as well. Do you think now that it's still a good representation of the band, or do you think they've changed?
I haven't admittedly heard their latest album, which I've heard is a bit divisive, to say the least. But would I say that this is a good representation of the 1975? Yes, I would. I think it's definitely a very good representation of their stuff before 2018, 2019. I think it's a very good representation of what they were going for on their first album, and then obviously their second album, I Like It When You Sleep, etc, etc, etc. Very long album title that I can't be able to say. But it's definitely one of the songs which I think stand out by the 1975. Whilst I wouldn't say like it is the archetypal 1975 song, if I was to go with anything, I'd probably say It's Not With You from A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships. I would say that that's the one that's probably the blueprint for the band. But if you're looking for like more, not aggressive, but certainly grungier sound, which is definitely prevalent on their first couple of albums, or certainly the first one especially, this is definitely a good blueprint for it. There are probably other songs that I'm forgetting, but those are just the ones that popped into my head like straight away. So moving on from the influential side into my favourites category, and it is the song Greyhound by Swedish House Mafia. Everyone knows the song Don't You Worry Child from the Swedish trio, which was also released in 2012, so very feasibly could have featured. But whilst that was more EDM pop, I think this song is much more aggressive and progressive, rhyming schemes, and a much better showcase of their production capabilities. So that's one of the reasons why I went for it. Bit of background to the song. It was part of a promotion for a new drink by Absolut Vodka, entitled, as you might have guessed, Absolut Greyhound, and the music video features the three producers controlling three separate greyhounds in a cross-desert race. I've always been like, I don't know why, I've just really loved that music video. I love the kind of interconnectivity between the two sections. So obviously the producers controlling the greyhounds and then the greyhounds running. It did actually hit number 13 in the UK charts, despite being a wholly instrumental song. And I remember watching the charts once back when I was actually semi-interested in it. And the narrator made an off-the-cuff remark of, "Come on, guy," or something along the lines of, "Come on, guys, can you have included some vocals to sing along with? No need to. This is their best song, not by a massive distance," because I think Antidote is another great production song, obviously the one they did with Knife Party. But what it lacks in the anthemic nature of Don't You Worry Child, it makes up for in like song developments, the melody, and the soundscape that it creates. So with that in mind, I had to pick it for my favourites.
Okay. So I'm not going to say I don't like it. I just not a huge fan. I'd probably put it somewhere in between it's okay and I don't like it. Just somewhere in the
middle. As to be expected.
But I do think it's because I just don't have the tools to appreciate it, like the guy who was narrating the charts or whatever. Because we, as generic music listeners, tend to want this thing that we can sing along to and will stick in our brains. Whereas someone who's really, really interested in a genre will tend to really appreciate and dive deep into, you know, what makes it up and what makes it really clever and well done and all that. And my question is, why do you think this instrumental did so well on the charts compared to others? Just because of, you know, the way that the guy responded to it and the way that many people tend to like this kind of music only if it really has lyrics that they can sing along to.
Well, interestingly, it was actually Swedish House Mafia's lowest charting single in the UK. But I think it might also be because of the fame that they had within not just the EDM world, but also the EDM pop world. You know, they'd done collaborations with people like Tiny Temper and Pharrell and Knife Party. So they obviously had that kind of built-in repertoire. And they're all three of the producers are well established in their own right. So they're also popular amongst not just the underground scene, but the mainstream scene as well. So as a result of that, I can see why it didn't chart as highly, because again, as you say, a lot of people are attuned to being like, oh, where are the vocals? Where's the lyrics that we can sing along to? But why can't we just appreciate the song for what it is? And what it is a fantastic progressive house song, which has this really cool soundscape. Maybe that's why it did chart, because again, it had that kind of mainstream appeal, but also had the underground appeal as well. So a lot of people were interested in buying it and listening to it and streaming it and whatever. And as it turned out, it still charted quite highly. My second favourites pick is another electronic song, admittedly. So again, being very Harry generic as per normal, and it is the song Maths by Deadmau5. What's very important that you know is 4 + 4 + 4 is 12, because those are the lyrics which you'll hear throughout the entirety of the song, although they only appear 3 times. Hence why the title is, well, Maths. It's part of the album called Album Title Goes Here, which features the hit Professional Griefers, featuring Gerard Way, which is another good song and came very close to featuring. But Maths is yet another progressive house style song built predominantly around something akin to an octatonic scale, with some variations and harmonic developments, which I really, really like. It was meant to go onto his album 4 × 4 = 12, which was his previous record, but he had to scrap it owing to not finishing the song on time, so it became the lead single from Album Title Goes Here. There was also a video release for it, with a load of weird graphics and words floating around on the screen, although Deadmau5 did confirm it was unofficial and that it hadn't been run by anyone prior to its release. So, yeah, that's that, really. But for me personally, why I've decided to pick it is I just love the constant addition of layers and, to an extent, harmonies throughout the track. And there's a bit, I think it's like the 3-minute mark, it basically became a meme between me and my brother for a while. I basically just go into his room, start playing it, and we both have a mini rave.
Yeah, I love Professional Griefers. I had that on repeat. I didn't find the song when it was released. I found it a lot later through just going through My Chemical Romance and then Gerard Way, and then I was like, oh, we did a song with Deadmau5. Like, what the hell? How did I not find this? But that I still really like this. I love the use of a slightly different scale to what you're expecting. It adds just a different layer of musicality to me. I think that's what I don't like about a lot of things. They just sound very sort of, I think harmonically, melodically quite generic, but this just sounds different. I was wondering, because obviously this has like very few vocals, very few lyrics in it, but it still has some. But it has like significantly less than Professional Groovers.
Yeah.
With deadmau5's type of thing, do you prefer it with vocals or without vocals?
Oh, good question. It's dependent on the atmosphere of the song. I think it works, like, for example, Professional Griefers works really well with vocals because it's got that aggressive sound, but it's always looking for something else to come in over the top. But with this, I think it's good that they left it alone because, well, I just don't think it has the right kind of sound for vocals to be added over. But in terms of which one I prefer, again, it's just like dependent on so many factors. Like for this song, for example, I know that this song works as a pretty much wholly instrumental with some robotic vocals added in every now and again. But I wouldn't say that like I prefer deadmau5 with vocals or deadmau5 with additional vocals added in, or deadmau5 without additional vocals, because it brings out two separate styles in here. So with that in mind, I don't really think I have a preference. How's that for sitting on the fence? But I can understand why certain songs of his have vocals and why certain songs of his don't, and which ones should and which ones shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect you to have a definitive answer, because I definitely agree that it varies so heavily on just the type of sound that is. I mean, he obviously pre-plan which ones go with which one he'll have a singer with and which one he won't. So the ones that won't have a singer will be created so that, you know, a listener doesn't get bored and it doesn't just sound like a backing track. So obviously it has that sort of thing, but I obviously didn't expect you to have a definitive answer, because that's a really hard question to say whether you prefer one or the other.
Yeah, it's not really that. It's like saying, do you prefer the atmospheric 1975 songs or the songs by the 1975 with vocals? Like, they're two completely different ideas. But it still got me thinking a bit, and was an interesting viewpoint to share. So that is my favourites section. Moving on to my unknown ones now, and my first one, we're sticking in electronic music. Again, but I promise you this is the last one. This is the final one that I've got for electronic music in this list. I have mentioned it on the podcast briefly before, but I'm bringing it up again because, well, reasons. And it's the song Strut by Televisor. Strut is a new disco influenced track, and to me, it just makes me want to do what the title suggests and just strut around. It has that kind of interesting new disco soundscape to it, which is really cool and experimental and funky as well. It's unlike the vast majority of what Monstercat has released rather, and the harmonic switch and focus near the end of the track works really well, and it gives the track a new dimension which I really enjoy. Surprisingly though, it wasn't actually voted onto Monstercat's Best of 2012 compilation album, although it did make it onto their 3-year anniversary album, so at least there is some silver lining. But again, it's so different from what they normally release, like especially at the time, it was kind of progressive house or dubstep or, you know, the tropes of the time. But then all of a sudden this song comes along and you just think, oh, okay, this is something completely different than what I wasn't expecting. And it just has so much going on, as well as an absolutely incredible bass line, which I always find myself focusing on more than anything else. It just has a really different sound to from what you would normally expect. So as a result of that, I decided to pick it in my unknown section.
Yeah, I was really confused because I was like, I actually like this. Why do I like this? And then you said it was different to what Monstercat normally do, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's why I like it. For me, I love that bass line. That really made it for me. I really think that was it. And also, it is quite repetitive, but it has a sense of like a progression or a journey. Or it does go somewhere, and it makes me want to keep listening to see where it goes. I think a lot of songs, the reason I don't like them, apart from the fact that I don't have an appreciation for it necessarily, is because that you will say that they have a sense of progression and a sense of going somewhere and, you know, all that kind of thing, but I don't see it, whereas with this one I really did. I can't really say why I did, but for this one I just really wanted to keep listening and see where it went.
That's the thing, you want to keep on listening to it and just hear where it goes. And yet again, it's just that thing with that active listening thing of just like hearing out for the bass line and not trying to sing along to it, but certainly just Oh, actually, yeah, definitely try to sing along to it. What am I saying? But also just like, that's what I just predominantly focus on personally, and just seeing where it goes from there. And especially with the harmonic shift, I want to see how they implement the bass line into that. And it's just so, again, it's complex. It's got so many different things and sounds going on. And that could mean that it sounds all over the place to some people, but to me, it just sounds really cohesive and really well thought through. And just groovy. Like there's no other like proper adjective that sums up this song more than just groovy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I found myself dancing along to it, which I don't think I've really done for many of your picks like this. But again, with this one and the Deadmau5 one, really, I really like them both. So
that is a big dub. That is a big dub. We take those dubs every day of the week. But yeah, so yeah, you definitely like that one. Thankfully. Maybe not the case for the second one, but I don't know. We'll see. I was so angry at myself for not including this song on the Numbers episode, so I'm not making the same mistake twice. And it's the song, I'm going to have to be very careful here because it does have an explicit word in the title, and we do try and keep this PG as much as we can. 96 F-Freeze, or Fries, if you rather, by the Grime MC JME.
Can I just hop in real quickly and say I much prefer that title? 96 Fries. Sorry, 96 I'll let fries. You continue now, but I love that.
No, it's fine. I rate 96 Fries as well. I was trying to figure out how to get around it. That's fine. So, yeah, this is the first single from Jamie's 2015 album, Integrity is Greater Than, which is one of the first albums that I really listened to intensely. And this is also like during the phase where I was starting to get into grime music, so it kind of tied in with that. And it's also the second in Jamie's 96 series, following 96 Bars of Revenge in 2011 and preceding 96 of My Life from the either last year or this year, dependent on whether you count Grime MC as an album release of last year because it was released on vinyl last year, or as this year when it was released onto digital streaming services. I digress. But this, as the title suggests, is Jamie spitting 96 bars straight, and there's absolutely no let-up either in the old-school beat or JME's lyrics. And he does it, as he so proudly proclaims at the end of the song, in one take, which is very impressive. I don't know if it was his first take or whatever, but he did it all in one take, which is, again, pretty damn impressive. It's full of clever wordplay, funny bars, and it's just basically a JME archetype. And I have special memories of rapping this song during a Gold DB prelim expedition when we were taking a break. So it was actually released, I think it was like the 2nd of January 2012. So it only just qualifies for this list. But thank goodness that it does, because it was a bona fide inclusion.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to start by being positive and saying that doing that in one take is very impressive. Writing lyrics like that, very impressive. I just don't like it.
Yep.
I was listening to it and I was like, this is just not a bit of me. I hate saying that, but it's just not. Just don't like it. And I think part of it for me, I really like sort of things with a story, or things that have like not necessarily a story going all the way through, but just a subject matter of some kind. And I don't know if there is one. My question is there one? But like, I couldn't hear one from this. It just sounded like a lot of random bits of wordplay and stuff. But is there a subject matter? And if so, what is it? And if not, do you think there needed to be one?
I don't think there needed to be one for this particular song. I think it's kind of like just Jamie trying to write as many clever different things as he can and put them all into one song. But I don't think it needs to. There needs to be like an overriding storyline for this one. I think it's just to try and show off his emceeing ability more than anything else, because there are quite a few songs which he does, including 96 of My Life, which is a storytelling. It's very personal. It's very reflective on his life, obviously, but this one is meant to be like this really hard-hitting old school classic that isn't meant to like go anywhere per se, but it's just meant to show what JME can bring to the table in terms of grime. So that's what I think the aim of this song is.
Yeah, okay. Fine, sure. No, fine. I don't think it needed to be. I just think that maybe I'm not the kind of person who's then meant to appreciate it. Like, maybe I'm not that person. I'm not the target audience for that then.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, as someone who is quite well versed in grime, I'd say, no pun intended, I think that I just personally love this song because of that. I think it just sums up, or it's just one of those songs that really sums up what I love most about grime. It's that kind of really dirty beat and just really punchy lyrics that are in your face and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, that's why I don't have any other reasons for it. I think I've outlined them pretty clearly. So that is my list concluded.
Yeah, so now we're going to move on to our generic middle section. It's not really a question. It's a topic that we've sort of decided to discuss and that's quite very prevalent at the moment, especially in our sort of circle or all music students, you know. And it's just sort of the current state of the arts and how they're being treated in today's society.
Yeah, as I said at the start, we really won't go on for too long with this because if we do, then we'll annoy ourselves. But we'll try and keep it as short and brief as we can. I have a shameless plug, I'm aware, but I have also written an article on this on my website, which you can go and check out if you want to, which I outline my points and my ideas a lot more clearly. But basically, it's just a complete neglection of everything that we stand for. It's like the taking things for granted that all of a sudden music just randomly appears. There's no thought that goes into it. There's no training. There's no development. There's no skill set. There's nothing like that. It's just some people turn up at an orchestra gig or whatever it might be and just play some music, and all of a sudden it's apparently this arbitrary magic wand that gets put onto them and they play it absolutely perfectly. And that's the implication that many people get with music, especially those in a higher power. Big up Rishi Sunak. Actually, don't big up Rishi Sunak, never mind.
Really don't.
No, really don't. But like, that's the point, is that it's just this kind of stereotypical assumption that we just don't really do anything or that we don't train that much, when it's actually the exact opposite, as it is with every single other profession in the entire world. It doesn't just happen overnight.
Exactly. Sort of going off that point, you may have seen circulating recently this cyber advert with a ballet dancer saying, I can't remember the exact wording of what it said, but it was like her next career could be in cyber, she just doesn't know it yet, and it's a picture of a ballet dancer tying up her point shoes, which is so offensive to her years of training and pain and exhaustion and dedicating her life to something, and saying that then her career is not worthwhile, she should do something else, she should do something that is, like a STEM subject or whatever, which I'm not saying those aren't viable careers at all, because they are. But if you think about it, it's not only the ballet dancer in it that is an arts career. Someone had to take the photo, someone had to do the makeup, someone had to do the costumes, someone had to graphic design the advert. All of these things going into it, people just don't realise how much stuff goes on behind the scenes. It's not just, your favourite singers and your performers and your, all that kind of thing, which, it is as well, but it's also all the things that goes on behind the scenes in artistic ways that you don't realise. And the thing that really gets to me is saying that it's not useful, especially in this time, but I think arts, anything arts related, so any music, any films, TV, radio shows, even something like the news, if you go into depth into all the different roles.
Even this.
There's a lot of arts. Exactly, this podcast, everything. Completely arts-based. I think no one would have got through the lockdown without any of those things. You imagine, you'd have been so bored, not you specifically, but people would have been so bored without these things and driven to insanity, essentially. I couldn't imagine, I know I'm a music student, so I'm probably quite biased in this, but I could not imagine my life without music, without any kind of arts, because I would be so bored.
Even with even with the other art forms, even if you're not taken by one, I'm not taken by TV shows, for example, I am taken by things like music or podcasts or things like that. And it's all of these various things that contribute to society. Again, people being like, oh, go and train as a builder or whatever. But a builder is often working on an architect's vision, which, get this, is being creative. But I think my main thing, one of my main gripes with this is that it gives us such a horrendous message to the younger generation. Like, for example, I have got two cousins who are 10 and 13 years younger than me, respectively. One of them learns the guitar, and the other one has just got into playing the drums. And all of a sudden, they've just been told, no, don't train for them because you're not going to need them. And it's like, well, why? Like, it's not, they might not want to pursue that career per se. They might not want to. And that's obviously perfectly fine. I'm not going to tell them to be a musician. But that's the point. It's just this extra skill, this extra string to your bow, if you'd like, that you can work with. And to take that away and just neglect all of the years of training and hard work that I put into refining my craft just seems like, well, what was the point of all that then?
Well, exactly. I don't want to say any more in case I get a bit too angry like I did the other day. But I do want to end sort of by saying if you are an arts student of any capacity or someone who works in the arts, I hope you're doing okay. Your career is so viable, and we don't know what we'd do without you. Anyone who knows people in the arts, please keep supporting them. Keep validating their life choices. Keep appreciating what they produce and what they create, because that's so important at the moment.
I think I can echo that message very clearly. We are viable. And without us, or without arts, the world would just be, well, I don't even want to know. I do not even want to know what it would be. We just thought we would do this little segment just to obviously express that what is going on with that kind of thing is ridiculous. Don't listen to what they're saying because it's not true. The arts sectors are viable and they have to be protected as much as possible, considering they are more under threat than ever before. So please continue to support people who work in the arts, people who study the arts and stuff like that, as much as you can. And we urge you all to just appreciate them more and don't take them as for granted as you were before.
So the final section of the podcast, as usual, is what we've been listening to this week. So Harry, would you like to start us off?
So my first song, I'm actually going to promote a song from one of my friends, because he actually released some new material recently. So I decided to go back and check out his old stuff, and I've decided to highlight the song Fool by Voltone. A lot of his stuff is kind of like generic EDM kind of thing, but Fool, I think, is actually quite a cool soundscape for a drum and bass song. And whilst I don't think it's like incredible per se, it's certainly a much better song in terms of, again, the production quality than a lot of the other stuff that he's done. He's very fledgling. In fact, I think he's actually doing a DJ set on the night of this recording. So shout out you, and I wish you all the best of luck if you're listening. But so that's my first one I thought I'd highlight. My second one, I've been listening a lot to a Tribe Called Quest recently. They're kind of like jazz rap group from the 90s and in a way the mid 2010s, and the song Award Tour is just a great song. It's just got an amazing jazz beat to it, and the rhymes and the verses on there are great, and the chorus is just so sing along to "We on Award Tour with Mohammed, my man." It's just such a great thing to say. So I've been listening to that a lot this week. And my final one is the song Sweet by IYFFE, AU5, and Auratic. In case you hadn't figured it out by now, it is another Monster Cat song, big ups themselves. But it's this kind of complextro sound with just so many different things going on again. Like, it's definitely not something which I would recommend for people who are just getting into electronic music to listen to, because it is very brash, it's very hard hitting. But if you're into the electronic music scene, I would definitely recommend going and checking this out, because it's very unknown. I think it's only got like 1 million players or something like that on Spotify. It's so underrated, and I would definitely go and check that out if you haven't done so already. So that concludes my list.
Okay, so my first song is a song called Make Pretend by a band called Juice. I found them by listening to like one of their other songs and then just sort of getting into their sound. The first song I listened to is very much like jazzy pop type stuff. Had a bit of like jazz violin in there. It was really cool.
Oh, nice.
But this one's more of a like pop rock type sort of feel to it, and I really like it still. I really like them, and the sort of, they still have their kind of their sound, but they just try out different genres, and I think that's really cool. So definitely recommend giving them a listen. You might like at least one song that they've done. My second song is a song called Cotton Candy by Youngblood. It's a new release. He does a lot of like emo pop stuff. But this song is more, I think it's more upbeat than what he normally does. So if you're sort of not up for his sort of depressing stuff, I fully recommend giving this a listen. And my final song is a song called Notebook by Melanie Martinez. I'm very surprised I haven't mentioned her on the podcast yet, because I love Melanie Martinez. She just has a really unique voice and unique concepts. This comes from her new EP that was released. It's called After School. Because her album previous to this was called K-12, which was like a concept of like being in a school and quite magical and stuff. So this is like the After School EP, like a spin-off of this, if you like. So I fully recommend giving that a listen.
How many times do you need to say the word unique when you talk about a singer's voice?
I just tend to listen to singers with unique voices. Like, that's just what I listen to. So, yeah,
right.
I mean...
All right, fair enough, whatever. So with that comes the end of this week's edition of the podcast. We really hope that you have enjoyed it. Next week, obviously, we go back to the random themes of songs in the title, or certain things in the titles of particular songs. You'll find out what that is at some point, as will we, because we don't know which one it is yet. But in any case, thank you very much for listening, and until next time,
we'll see you there.